Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're talking about we all need someone to believe and use progress instead of waiting for. Think about it. The first time you tried something truly difficult, what gave you the courage to start? Was it a surge of personal confidence, or was it a teacher who said, I see something special in you? A coach who told you you've got potential, a friend who refused to let you quit, even when you were ready to give up. When someone else looks at you and says, I believe in you, something shifts. You don't become instantly fearless or unstoppable, but a crack forms in your doubt. Light gets in. Suddenly the possibility of success, the idea that you might be capable, begins to feel real. Not because you said it to yourself, but because someone else did first. Children learn this naturally. They look to adults to tell them who they are. A child becomes confident because a parent tells them they're brave, kind, creative. Over time, those external affirmations become internal truths. But that doesn't end with childhood. Adults need it too. Especially in the moments when life has worn us down, when we've failed repeatedly, or when the world around us has gone quiet. It doesn't have to come from someone famous or successful. Sometimes the quietest voices are the ones that matter most. A coworker who says you've got this. A mentor who tells you you're ready for this step. A partner who looks you in the eyes and says, I trust you. These moments don't always look grand. They often come in passing conversations, in late-night texts, in the smallest gestures, but they stick. Because when we're at our lowest, those words feel like air in our lungs. Needing belief from others isn't a flaw. It's part of how we're wired. We're social beings. We look to each other for signs of safety, for cues of acceptance, for encouragement that we're not alone. The strength to believe in yourself often begins with someone else saying, I see who you are and I'm not giving up on you. Eventually that belief becomes internalized. You start to hear their voice echo inside you. Their faith becomes your fuel. And over time your own voice grows louder, steadier, more certain. What began as borrowed belief becomes your own. You start walking differently. You speak more clearly. You take risks you once avoided, not because the fear disappeared, but because someone's belief taught you that you are bigger than your fear. You are more than your mistakes. You are capable of more than you think. That is the power of outside belief. It doesn't just help you once, it helps you build a foundation for the future. A foundation on which your own self-belief can stand tall. Doubt is persistent. It creeps in quietly, almost invisibly. It disguises itself as logic, caution, and realism. It tells you to wait. It tells you you're not ready. It points to every past failure, magnifies every flaw, and whispers, you don't have what it takes. And the more you listen, the louder it gets. One doubt becomes two become 20, until suddenly you're buried beneath a mountain of hesitation and fear. This is the reality many people live with daily. They wake up with doubts. They walk into rooms carrying the weight of unseen insecurities. And often they keep going, but with a limited version of themselves, not because they aren't capable, but because the voice of doubt has convinced them they aren't enough. But then something happens. In the middle of all that inner noise, someone speaks. Just one person, one voice. And that voice says something radically different from what doubt has been screaming all along. It's shocking how powerful a single moment of encouragement can be. It doesn't take a motivational speech or a dramatic intervention. Sometimes it's one sentence, spoken with sincerity, that breaks through years of internal noise. And in that moment, something shifts. It's like a window opening in a room that's been locked for years. The air changes, the perspective shifts. Suddenly there's space for hope. Encouragement doesn't always erase doubt, but it creates resistance to it. It plants a seed that says, maybe everything I've been telling myself isn't entirely true. Maybe I'm more than I think. Maybe I'm not alone in this. What makes encouragement so powerful isn't just the words, it's the trust behind them. When someone looks at you and says they believe in you, what they're really saying is, I see you. I see beyond the surface. I see who you are and who you could become. That kind of belief is more than flattery. It's a mirror showing you a better version of yourself, one you might have forgotten existed. It's important to understand that most people don't need a massive audience clapping for them. They need just one person who genuinely sees them and says, keep going. One person who doesn't walk away when things get hard. One person who's not impressed by perfection but moved by effort. That kind of voice can be louder than every internal doubt put together. Doubt is repetitive. It recycles the same thoughts, the same fears, the same past mistakes. Encouragement is disruptive. It's a spark, a disruption of the usual pattern. It introduces a new possibility that things could go right, that you might actually succeed, that failure is not the end but a beginning. You never forget the people who encouraged you when you were at your most vulnerable. You remember where you were, what they said, how it felt. Their words become part of your internal vocabulary. Long after they've spoken, their voice lives inside you, becoming a weapon against doubt whenever it returns. That's why a single moment of encouragement matters so much. It becomes a reference point, a source of energy, a reminder that someone somewhere believed, and if they did, maybe you can too. The beauty of it is that encouragement doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't require eloquence or timing. It only requires truth and presence. It's not about fixing someone or solving their problems. It's about seeing them, affirming them, and offering them a reason to keep believing, even if it's just a little more than they did yesterday. Self-doubt is one of the most paralyzing forces in the human experience. It doesn't always scream. Often it whispers, subtly eroding confidence from the inside out. It convinces you to wait until you're ready to avoid the risk of failure, to sit quietly instead of speaking up. It is the internal editor that crosses out your dreams before they ever make it to the page. The great tragedy is not that people lack talent or potential, it's that they stop themselves before they ever begin. What separates those who act from those who hesitate isn't always skill or intelligence. It's belief, not the kind of blind belief that ignores reality, but the grounded, steady kind that says, I may not have all the answers, but I have what it takes to start. That belief is in you deeply. You stop seeing setbacks as proof that you don't belong. Instead, you start to see them as part of your becoming. Think of the people who have made real progress in life. They were not fearless. They had doubts. They questioned themselves. But somewhere along the way, belief showed up and it overpowered the voice that said, stay safe. It gave them permission to act, to try, to put themselves out there knowing that falling down doesn't disqualify you. Not trying at all is what does. Belief has a way of igniting you. It turns paralysis into momentum. It doesn't wait for perfect timing. It doesn't require the stars to align. Belief says, start where you are with what you have. And that shift in mindset can change the entire trajectory of someone's life. You begin to make that call, apply for that opportunity, speak up in that meeting, launch that idea, not because you're sure you'll succeed, but because you no longer accept the idea that you're not worthy of the chance. What's even more remarkable is how belief builds on itself. Every action you take, even the smallest one, reinforces the belief that you are capable. One brave decision creates a ripple effect. You take a step, and that step becomes a reference point. The next time self-doubt tries to stop you, you can say, I've done hard things before. I can do it again. That's how belief transforms over time from something external to something internal. At first, you may need others to remind you of your strength. But the more you act, the more you start to see it for yourself. Eventually, belief becomes less about motivation and more about identity. You don't just believe you can act, you believe you are the kind of person who does. You see yourself as someone who takes initiative, someone who shows up despite fear, someone who creates. Standing at a crossroads, unsure whether to keep going or give up, whether to risk the next step or retreat into what's familiar. In those moments, we often feel exposed, uncertain, even lost. And then seemingly out of nowhere, someone steps in. Maybe they don't even realize what they're doing. Maybe it's just a sentence, a look, a note, a gesture. But what they say or do hits different because it meets you exactly where you are and it tells you you're seen, you're not crazy for dreaming, and you're worth betting on. These people aren't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes they're quiet observers who take the time to really notice what others miss. A teacher who pulls you aside and says you have a gift. A coach who lets you take the lead before you think you're ready. A manager who gives you the project no one else would. A friend who listens not to respond, but to understand and reminds you of who you are when you've forgotten. And because they're often not seeking attention or credit, their belief becomes even more profound. It's not performative, it's personal. It doesn't come with conditions or expectations. It simply says, I see potential in you, and I'm standing with you until you see it too. That kind of belief becomes part of your story. You carry it with you through every high and low. When you hit roadblocks, you hear their words echoing in your mind. When you start to doubt yourself, you remember the look in their eyes when they told you that you could do this. Their belief becomes a shield against the criticism of the world and the criticism in your own head. What's incredible is how permanent that impact can be. Decades can pass. You can outgrow the job, move to another city, lose touch entirely. But the feeling of what they gave you, the confidence they sparked, the courage they awakened never disappears. It becomes a thread woven into the fabric of your identity. We are not only shaped by our experiences, we're shaped by the people who walk with us through them. And those who believe in us during our most uncertain seasons are the ones who become landmarks in our memory. They remind us that we are not defined by our lowest moments, that even in failure there is worth. Even in fear there is strength. And even in silence there is a voice waiting to speak. Often what makes belief so powerful is that it shows up when we least expect it. Not when we've proven ourselves, but when we're still fumbling. Not when we're confident, but when we're afraid. That's when it matters most, when it's undeserved, when it's raw, when it catches us off guard and opens a door we thought was locked. Not just because it made them feel good, but because it helped them become more of who they truly are. It set something in motion. It gave them permission to show up more fully, to stop hiding, to start living like they were enough. Not because they achieved some external standard, but because someone they respected saw the truth in them long before they could. It only takes one spark to ignite something far greater than itself. That's the way belief works. It begins quietly, often invisibly, with one person seeing potential in another. It might not seem like a grand gesture in the moment, a few words of encouragement, a risk taken on someone inexperienced, a decision to stand beside someone who's unsure, but those small moments can set off a powerful chain reaction that reaches far beyond the original interaction. When someone believes in you, something internal shifts. You begin to feel a kind of responsibility, not in the heavy, burdensome sense, but in the deeply personal sense of wanting to rise to the level of that belief. It stirs a kind of momentum, a desire not to prove them wrong, but to honor the faith they've placed in you. That energy, that internal momentum doesn't stay contained. It spills over. And eventually, almost without thinking, you find yourself passing it on to someone else. The process isn't always conscious. You don't always say, because someone believed in me, I'm going to believe in you. But the imprint of that belief lingers, and it shapes the way you interact with the world. You become more empathetic. You listen more deeply. You start to recognize uncertainty in others because you remember what it felt like in yourself. And in those moments, you find yourself saying the same kind of words you once heard. I think you've got what it takes. Belief at its core is transferable. When it's genuine, when it's rooted in presence and intention, it creates space for others to become more. It becomes a quiet form of leadership, not through authority, but through influence. And what's remarkable is that you don't need to have reached the mountaintop to pass it on. You don't have to be finished, perfect, or even fully confident yourself. Sometimes the most powerful belief comes from those who are still in the process of becoming, who know exactly how fragile it can feel to be at the beginning. That's what makes the chain reaction of belief so accessible. Anyone can start it. You don't need a title, a platform, or a spotlight. You just need to notice. Notice the effort that isn't being recognized. Notice the doubt in someone's eyes. Notice the quiet struggle someone is carrying while trying to appear strong. And then in that noticing, choose to respond not with solutions or advice, but with belief. The simple, grounded kind that says, I see you, I believe in you, keep going. That kind of belief doesn't stop with the person you give it to. It travels with them. It influences the way they treat others, the way they lead, the way they raise children, the way they build teams, the way they hold space for people in their lives. And just like that, a single act of belief becomes something much larger. It becomes culture. It becomes legacy. It becomes movement. People often underestimate their impact because they think in terms of scale. They think if they aren't reaching thousands, they aren't doing enough. But the truth is that belief has never needed a stage. It only needs a heart willing to see and a voice willing to speak. One person's belief can inspire another and another and another until what started as a whisper becomes a wave. And that's why belief is never wasted, even if you don't see the immediate result. Even if the person you encourage doesn't act on it right away. The seed is still there, planted beneath the surface. One day, in a moment of doubt or struggle, it may be the very thing that helps them rise. And when they do, they'll carry that belief forward, offering it to the next person who needs it. There's a kind of strength that comes from within the type we associate with resilience, grit, and self-discipline. But there's another kind of strength, one that often goes unrecognized, yet is just as powerful. It's the strength we gain when we choose to believe in someone else, when we step outside of ourselves and say, I'm not just here for my own success, I'm here to lift others too. It might seem counterintuitive at first. After all, in a world where competition is normalized, where individual achievement is emphasized, the idea of placing energy into someone else's growth can seem like a detour from your own path. But what often gets overlooked is that believing in others does not deplete us, it expands us. It builds qualities in us that we don't access when we're focused only on ourselves. Patience, empathy, vision, perspective. To believe in someone is to invest in them. And just like any meaningful investment, it requires more than words. It asks us to look closely, to understand not only where someone is today, but who they could become if given a little trust, a little room, and a little support. It asks us to hold faith in moments when their confidence is low, to remind them of their capacity when they can't see it clearly. And in that act, something shifts in us. We begin to see people not for what they lack, but for what lies dormant beneath the surface, waiting to be activated. The world is full of people who are overlooked, not because they don't have something valuable to offer, but because no one has taken the time to believe in them. When you become the person who does, you not only change their trajectory, you also develop a deeper understanding of leadership and influence. True leadership isn't measured by how far you climb, but by how many people rise with you. It's about lifting your gaze from your own journey and becoming someone who makes room for others. Believing in others also keeps us grounded. It reminds us of our own path, of the people who believed in us, of the chances we were given, of the time someone saw potential we hadn't yet discovered. It reconnects us with humility because it's easy to forget how much we owe to the encouragement and support of others. By choosing to be that kind of person for someone else, we stay connected to what truly matters, not just achievement, but impact. This kind of belief creates bonds that are different from everyday relationships. It builds trust, loyalty, and shared purpose. People don't forget those who stood by them when they were uncertain. They don't forget the ones who said, you can do this, when they themselves weren't sure. And that memory becomes a part of the foundation on which they build their confidence. There's also something deeply rewarding about watching someone you believed in grow into who they were meant to be. Seeing them take the leap, take the stage, take the job, and knowing you played a part, however small, in helping them get there. That kind of fulfillment doesn't come from winning alone. It comes from knowing you helped someone else win too. We often look for strength and control, independence and self-reliance, but real strength includes vulnerability. It includes the willingness to care, to invest emotionally, to risk disappointment. Believing in someone else means you open yourself to hope, and hope, while powerful, is also delicate. But it's through that vulnerability that connection deepens. You begin to realize that we're not meant to move through life as isolated achievers, but as people who contribute to each other's journeys. When you believe in others, you sharpen your vision. You learn to see beyond surface-level judgments. You begin to notice potential where others only see problems. You start responding with support instead of skepticism. And slowly, the environment around you changes. The people near you grow bolder. Teams get stronger, relationships get richer, not because everyone becomes perfect, but because they feel seen, valued, and trusted. And it all begins when one person makes the choice to believe.